Right. Okay. So, what got you interested in canoeing in the first place?
Just my dad's birch veneer canoe in Deep River, Ontario. We did our own kicking out of native people to get that waterfront land in Deep River, but that's another story.
Really?
1946, they were still doing it,
Hmm.
dispossessing people who had title to their land. They wanted it for a town site for the atomic energy plant, so they they kicked off the eight families of Anishinaabe who lived there, but they had to move up to newly built places well back from the water, which they loved.
Hmm.
The Roman Catholic priest got to keep his part of the beach, but so it goes. Anyway,
Wow.
that's a side issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you've been canoeing for most of your life, really. And what is it about canoeing that touches your soul?
I just love it. All my one of my earliest memories in Deep River is being a little guy being paddled by my dad who just bought a canoe and couldn't paddle it very well, so he still did 3 strokes on this side and then 3 on the other side all the way to the Cheyenne to try to catch some fish, about a mile and a half. But it was a joy, and I loved it ever since. But we in Kingston live in a paddling paradise. This is just so gorgeous. All these lakes and rivers and places to explore. And I'm 80 years old now and still exploring it. I just love it.
Okay, so right now we're sitting on a explain where we are and
Oh yeah. Right now we're on a watershed boundary, and we're in a little saddle-shaped depression in that watershed boundary. It's quite rugged in both directions, but this is an easy way across from one lake on one watershed to another lake on another watershed. So just 75 meters of carrying your gear in your canoe, and you put it in on the other side. If you follow the water over here, you can travel all the way to Millhaven on the Bay of Quinte. Follow the water from the other side of this little portage, and you go all the way to Gananoque. In the old days, now you can follow the Rideau Canal to Kingston if you choose, but it's all water all the way, just with portaging where you have to get down to lower elevation.
so how do you know that this was in fact a portage going back in time and how far back in time?
Oh, it's just so easy. It's such an easy way across, and you can see yeah, I can't prove it. It would be nice to ask the people who own this land if they've ever found any artifacts, or to go here with a metal detector and see if there's any trade axes or anything left here. But most likely it was used for thousands of years by the native people who knew their way around in the bush. And the amazing thing is they had to do all their traveling by memory. They had to just remember the routes and go with somebody who knew the way.
So, yeah, that just seems so astounding to me. Does your memory work like that today?
Not as well as it used to. I'm 80 years old. But it used to work pretty well, yeah. And I still can find my way back the way I've been the same day. But it's a skill that you get as you get more used to doing it.
So, what skills are involved in doing that? What if you were trying to teach somebody how to find their way back? What would you suggest?
Oh, just be aware of what you see, and be aware that be confident that when you turn the other way, you'll recognize things that you saw on the way to where you are. It works amazingly. I first started doing it when I was a geologist, of course, but I've spent my whole life doing that, being able to do that.
Okay. So, I'm just trying to think that the importance of the canoe, and mapping, like in your opinion, um, well, talk a little bit about just the early history of Canada and the canoe and how that mattered.
Well, they had roots everywhere, and the birch bark canoe, of course, was the by far the best watercraft. The people, the Iroquois in the States had canoes made of elm bark, and they were much heavier, so they couldn't portage them so easily or paddle them so fast. That's why when Champlain raided to the south, they weren't afraid of getting caught on the way home because they knew they could paddle faster than the Iroquois could.
Huh.
Yeah,
Well, that's
in
interesting.
the Birch Bark watercraft. But it's just I don't know. Everywhere I go, I know that local people have the right watercraft for their local conditions, and the canoe is the right watercraft for our conditions, because you can portage it so easily. Jim McLaughlin says, "How many canoes does a man need? One more."
Say that again.
He has a whole flock of canoes, a whole fleet of canoes, and his answer, if you ask him, "How many do you need, Jim?" he says, "One more."
Oh,
You met him. He's the guy who actually did the lobbying to get the lower Madawaska made into a waterway park, and also the upper Madawaska and also the Opeongo. He was in Toronto, and he had been down the lower Madawaska, building on people who'd done it. Ed took me down. I took my brother down. My brother took Martin Thomas down. Martin Thomas took Jim McLaughlin down. Jim McLaughlin was working in Toronto, and he's a go-getter guy. You met him, yeah, and he's the guy who did the lobbying or led the lobbying to get those waterfront, to get those rivers declared into whitewater preserves.
huh. Well, we'll have to do an interview with him. I hadn't thought, but we really
That would
must.
be good. Yeah,
Yeah.
he'd be a good one to
So
do.
tell us a little bit about the legal stuff, about the fact that this portaging thing, that was so
Oh,
fascinating.
that surprised me to discover that. Yeah, the Private Property Act of Ontario has in it a clause number 65 that says the right to portage. And it uses the word portage 3 more times without ever defining it. It just assumes everybody knows what that means. And it holds that if public land has become private, and if there was a portage on that public land at the time it became private, the right to use that portage cannot be taken away from anybody who wants to do that. Even though the land is privately owned now, people have a right to carry their stuff if they're traveling by water, to carry whatever they want to carry. Doesn't even mention canoe, but they can use the portage to get from one navigable waterway to another. And that could have been done right here, 75 meters from a lake on that side to a lake on this side.
So how do you prove that it was a portage?
You'd have to make a case, and there have been court cases fought over that. Yeah, if you're denied the right, then you go to the legal redress, and if you have the money, you try to fight it. Canoe Ontario fought a famous one where there was a dam on a river somewhere near Toronto, and they took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they lost.
Wow.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
But paddlers still think the Supreme Court made the wrong decision.
Wow. So, I mean, again, what historical facts, or how do you, is there anything in the earth? Is it archaeological evidence, or is it hearsay?
Archaeological evidence would be really good. That would be absolutely
Documents of some
persuasive.
sort?
And just hang on just a sec.
Yeah. There would be no argument if you found a trade bead or a trade axe or any kind of an Indian arrowhead or the likes. That would be proof enough. There's no argument about the portages up the Ottawa Valley, because everybody knew that all the voyageurs went that way when it was all public. So a little portage like this would be more controversial if you wanted to make a legal case trying to prove it. You'd have to find an artifact.
Not very easy. Tempting to plant one, maybe.
Mary.
Would they be metallic? Would you be able to use a...
You could use a metal detector, yeah. You could try. That would be a good way to start. Yeah. Anything to make it easier.
Actually pick up an arrowhead? It would?
No, arrowheads are made of flint. They wouldn't show.
It would have to be some trade good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most likely a trade axe would show up. That would be a good one. They find them on the portages on the French River.
Okay.
Quite commonly, yeah.
So why would they find a trade axe? Like, why would anyone? That was a mistake that it got lost or left.
Oh yeah, or broken, whatever. Yeah. They were a common good that was given to the native people in exchange for furs or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, well, what would you like to include here that we haven't talked about?
Oh, that's we've been doing great. So go ahead, keep going.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to, some romantic stories that maybe you know about some of the early map makers or canoe, the cooperation between the explorers, in quotes, and the indigenous helpers. I mean,
Well,
Sorry,
I'll tell you one.
just be a sec. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to hold you up, but I just want to make sure. You got this. Good. Okay. Sorry.
I'll tell you one about Champlain because he's one of my heroes. I don't believe he ever didn't paddle. He did paddle with the native people. The only painting of him in a canoe, though, shows him holding the gunwales, which you don't do if you're in a canoe because it makes you unstable.
Right.
You have to keep your body vertical, and no matter how the canoe moves, you stay vertical with your knees and legs and body. Anyway, that's one point. But in his journals, he says, we paddled so many times. You can word search them now. And we know that he nearly drowned on the way up the Ottawa because he only had one native guide with him. The rest were all his own people. And he got stuck trying to pull a canoe up a rapids, and it pulled him into the water, and he couldn't swim, and he nearly drowned. So he wasn't a guy like the head of the Hudson Bay Company who just hired native people to paddle him around as a passenger. He couldn't have won their respect if he had been that kind of person. He was 41 years old in the prime of life, and he did everything. And the Jesuits that he brought to Canada too had to paddle. They've reported that, and what hard work it was to paddle, because it was expected of them by the native people. Nobody can respect a canoeist who sits and doesn't do the work.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What about David Thompson? Tell us a little bit about.
Oh, David Thompson. Well, I don't know what kind of watercraft he had made because some of them were just made of wood out west. They didn't have birch bark. But his men had to make them and to do down the Fraser River and everything. So out of cedar planks or whatever stuck together. No idea how they managed that. He describes it in his journal, though.
Yeah, but they would have used birch bark canoes. How far west?
Oh, as far as they could.
And how far would that be? Right to the Rockies?
Yeah. Well, one day he mentions that too in his journal, that they had broken camp in the spring and gone down a western river a certain distance, and they met some native people who had come all the way from Ontario that same spring to do trapping out west. So they brought their birch bark canoes with them all the way, all that distance. Astonishing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Would that have been by waterways?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They would have used waterways that were known.
Wow.
The longest portage was 22 kilometers from Lake Superior up to where they could start paddling again. That was called the Grand Portage.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what did that join to, the portage at the Lake Superior?
I think they had to go all the way up to some lakes that would connect to the west flowing rivers, the English River system, and yeah, yeah. Maybe they could use the one that comes down Kakabika Falls. I forget the name of the river. But there was more than one way. But the Grand Portage was quite a long one and quite brutal. So they used I think they used the larger canoes only below the long portage, and smaller birch bark canoes, and they would switch over from the really big freighter canoes to the smaller ones when they got there during the fur trade years. Yeah. But I'm really impressed too, though, how many people still enjoy canoeing. We have a canoe club in Kingston that's open to everybody. It has about 200 members, but 16,000 people, 116,000 people are eligible to belong to it. And when you get someone like Jim Raffin giving a talk, he can easily fill an auditorium of 600 people interested in canoeing. So, and everybody has a canoe at their cottage. We all know that.
So have you been involved in some of the Voyageur Canoe Brigade things?
No, I haven't done that. That was really fun though when we did that with the voyageurs that wanted to paddle the Rideau Canal. The Rideau Canal has a special mystique too. I had a friend, Charlie Hannon, who wanted to lead a series of paddles along the whole length of the Rideau Canal for the canoe club. And I thought, well, nobody will want to do that, Charlie, but we'll put it in the schedule. Well, there was all kinds of interest, even from people down in the States who had found our website and wanted to come and do that. We made them buy $30 memberships before we'd let them do it, with Charlie leading them. But he set it all up in 25-kilometer days and with places to camp and the like, and they thoroughly enjoyed it, everybody who did it. So the Rideau is a special place. I like the smaller waterways myself, the really clean water ones, but the Rideau has its own mystique for some people, for sure.
So what's your absolute favorite place to canoe?
Oh, I don't have an absolute favorite. Actually, the Salmon River, though, is special. And the lower Madawaska. Yeah, there's lots of them. And there's so many of them. I'm still finding new ones. I love the little waterways where the scenery changes fast as you paddle along. The bigger lakes are not so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, have you got more that you would like to say about canoeing or,
Probably think of a whole lot of things I should have said at the time, but can't think of anything more right now.
Yeah, okay.
Do we want to maybe go over this particular portage again, just to get a second
okay.
view?
So maybe just mention a few of the lakes and rivers, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he can take pictures.
Yeah.
To sort of show it.
Do you think the evidence that people have been using it would show up? The footprints down the steep part?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.